seem to remember when we were setting up part of your work, Morgan, we were listening to the radio to test out the speakers, and in fact there was a conversation about these two people talking about a film that had come out recently and saying, oh yes, but I felt that they disrupted the narrative and you must never do that. And I remembered laughing because that's exactly what this work is doing on purpose. I think it's interesting that not only is this collaboration between kind of everybody who experiences the work, but you all ended up with this work and with a lot of your work working collaboratively. Like Scott, I know that you often work with a number of different people, and you know, Laura, you've been working with Tina and stuff, and Morgan, you were saying that having the whole online user community for setting up Arduino and having them there. Do you think this is something that is just part of the digital art landscape? I mean, it's kind of, you don't hear about, I'm sure there's digital artists that are hiding up in their attics, you know, alone and impoverished, but you tend not to hear that so much. It tends to be very much a social type of activity. So does anybody have any thoughts on?
Yeah, I think it's largely tied to open source culture. And so when you have technologies like programming languages or Arduino or things like that, because they are open source, then there are communities that emerge around that. And there's a sort of, yeah, that's great. There's sort of a backbone, you know, maybe ideological about sharing your information and sharing your snippets of code and sharing your experiences with other people. And I think even if, for example, this artist was up in their attic creating digital work on their own, there's no way they're not at some point looking at a YouTube how-to video for some little piece that they're stuck on or cruising some forums somewhere. Because I think that's just, with the internet there as the vast library that it is, it's, how could you not ask it a question if a question comes up, you know?
Yeah, I can't even imagine now what I must have done before there was the internet to look up the answers to certain things, you know? Like we'll be sitting in the office and somebody will say, oh yeah, but didn't that film have so-and-so in it? Or, you know, didn't that happen in ancient Egypt? Like it doesn't matter how bizarre that may be.
It's sort of a demise of the debate. I remember in high school, for example, just arguing with friends about things, you know, the historical facts, you know, or you know, who played what solo in a Beatles tune or something like that. And now it kills the argument and it kills the moment because you go and you look it up on Wikipedia.
Yet at the same time, what I find interesting is kind of even factuality becomes that much more elusive because people live within their own filter bubbles, that there is no kind of shared consensus news source or even information source, maybe Wikipedia, I suppose, but that's baked in with its own biases in terms of, like, I don't know, Star Trek episodes having far more kind of effort put into them than feminist history or things like that. There's a reason for that, and it's based on the demographics of Wikipedia editors, but the whole kind of notion of a filter bubble in which both you're selecting kind of the information that comes to you, but also algorithms are tracking your behavior and saying, oh, well, you're more interested in this, and you're less likely to encounter any kind of ideological friction or worldviews other than the ones. And you get something like the insurgent Trump proto-presidency because people just kind of live within that world of the narrative that he's going to save America, and nothing intrudes on that, even though people outside of this, like, oh my God, how is this possible?
So yeah, I'm gonna go. Yeah, I guess collaborative stuff. I mean, I love working with engineers. They're great. They're like some of the most creative people I know. That often in their work life they don't get to actually explore so much of that. So they really love the opportunity to do that. I mean, I work with Dave Parfit a lot because we have completely compatible compatible and opposite skill sets. He's a musician who knows how to code, and I'm a writer who does video and knows how to do electronics. So we just have completely opposite, and we get along well. That helps. But I think a lot of projects, especially larger scale ones, it always involves a lot more. You can't know how to do everything. You can't. I mean, I try to pick up a new skill set every year. Like this year, I taught myself how to weld because I wanted to learn how to weld because metal is a good thing to build things out of if you need them to be sturdy. But it kind of, yeah, I mean, and at the same time, I can't hire a welder to weld things for me. That was why I had to learn how to do it, because because us artists, we take little pay for things, whereas other people don't a lot of the time. And I don't know, maybe we shouldn't, but you do what you got to do. You know what I mean? Yeah, I think that was it. This is so weird.
This one's better.
I can hear it inside my head, like twice over, and it's like, yeah, and it's hard enough hearing myself once.
Well, yeah, and it's yeah, and right now we're also collaborating with the bird sounds. Yeah, I guess I've mostly collaborated. I mean, in general, I like to have a balance between working with other people and completely working on my own. I need both, I find. And the collaborative relationships can be between finding people to work with who know how to do what you don't do, and for me in network technology, I know how to I can script, but I'm not a script poet, and I've learned that there are people who they just know how to do it. They're really amazing at it. So I like collaborating with them because they do it way better than I can do. So that kind of thing. For this project here, it's an interesting way of collaborating in that I didn't exactly know how it would be. I mean, you never do, but I really wanted to pose a kind of question that I didn't even know how to articulate. And I was intentionally wanting to try to do something like that was sort of obscure, and I wasn't sure about it. And I really liked the idea of developing the question as we were working together, and inviting, there were people that were invited to do from wherever. They were just people from Europe and here to do just short little pieces that I made scores for that are about the project. And then working with Kirk and Laurie, the three of us have been doing a biospheric art practice together for the past, I guess, 2 years? Yeah, and it's just it's an informal kind of thing. We meet somewhere outdoors at some location, and we are just trying to be present in the location we're in, and Laurie dances or moves. It's kind of an appropriate response to the situation, and she's using her body, and I'm using sound, whether I'm doing voice or flute or whatever, and we have George Tanatakis and Kirk, and sometimes we tell people about it and they come, but most of the time we forget, so we just do it as a practice. And so I think the tree sing piece that is in the project, it's a video with audio, came out of that work. And it's, I like setting up situations where there's a kind of score, an intention score. So it's like a kind of a what if. What will happen if we do this and this and this and this together? And then we do it. And so it's, I'm kind of maybe directing the process, or maybe I'm the composer, but not in the way where I want, okay, Laurie, I want you to look a certain way. I want this to be about this tree, and to, it's more like, no, we're focusing on, really, I find it more difficult, actually, this kind of score, because it requires quite a, the intensity of focus it requires a lot of energy. And so I never know what it's going to look like or sound like. It's really about what that intention is, and I have to say that it's one of the biggest pleasures for me working with other people in that way. It's very humbling, for people to trust and do the score, in that way, and then to see, to see the remarkable, the beauty that people come up with how they're focusing. So I really like that kind of collaboration. I think the most. One of the things that I realized when we got here, and I realized that we have one woman on a panel about, and I'm like, yay. And we have a woman curator. And I feel like it would not be good to leave out maybe some, I wanted to ask maybe you guys about this. As probably everybody knows, there's a lot of interesting things going on around gender and digital technology in media. I mean, about everything anyway. But on one hand, I think that working in network technologies for sure has made it possible for more women to do this kind of work. When we're in the networked world, you know, I mean, I don't know, some of them might be women or men. I might not, you know, I do know them all now, but could be anybody. But it really quite levels it. We don't have the, you know, I see who you are and you're a woman and this, you know, that kind of thing. There's stuff that's going on all the time. You know, it is. And the way information is passed, you know, it's really quite a man's world, the technical world. The language, how things are spoken. There's the, hi, how are you doing? And there's just a lot going on that is not maybe intentional, but it's there. And so there's a lot more information that gets generally passed around all of these, you know, all these things with men. And there's, I don't know if people know about Gamergate, Anita. Sarkeesian. And I mean, she had to have police protection. She was, you know, really trying to just expose some of the horrible misogyny in the gaming world, and was threatened. Her life was threatened. And there's been recently Ars Electronica. Do you know? Ars Electronica is kind of it's like the, oh, Doug will know. Doug, is Ars Electronica like the Venice Biennale for media art, would you say? Yeah, similar. Yeah, so there's been a recent controversy around. There are very few women who are nominated, so there's a lot of issues going. I mean, I could name a lot of things, but there's a lot going on right now around that, and I just wanted to ask you all what you thought about it, or if you've experienced it, and what if you've changed your thinking because of things that are being exposed right now around that.
Sure, I'm glad you brought that up, because I think that's a really kind of important point. Like, on the one hand, digital has this kind of potential to collaborate across borders, and yet I think there's a real issue, especially in the kind of tech community, the game community, around diversity and the kind of lack of diversity. And because of that lack of diversity, there's a lack of creativity. And again, it's not a huge surprise that the kind of the online community reflects the offline community in kind of sexism, in the kind of racism that you see. So you mentioned Anita Sarkeesian, the kind of what kind of preceded that was Zoe Quinn's, who was a video game maker who made something called Depression Quest, which was kind of a powerful, very simple, essentially choose your own adventure about the experience of having depression. And as you proceeded, your choices disappeared. So you could see them, but you couldn't choose them anymore. And it kind of mimicked, that kind of spiraling down of depression. It was kind of released. She released it for free to kind of get attention, and was just savagely attacked online. First, kind of people defending the genre. This is not a game. This is not a game. But then kind of attacking her for being a woman in this space, which is very, very kind of common, to the point that it's really pushed a lot of women commentators, Leah Alexander and others, out of that space to have like a really important discussion of gender in interactive media. And that kind of queued up the whole hashtag Gamergate controversy, in which in many ways preceded the rise of the alt-right in America, that this kind of backlash of online trolls just attacking especially women, but also people of color, in the most toxic, violent ways online. So yeah, I became very conscious of that as a teacher. because I think it was really important for our students kind of to discuss and reflect on the fact that the internet is a very gendered space, and people's experiences are very different depending on where they're coming from.
Do you think it has something to do with, you were talking earlier about who's designed these spaces, and you know, is it go hand in hand with cultural?
Yeah, I think it probably does. Yeah, you'd have to kind of look at I think I was looking at the individual spaces for that as well. I think it's, yeah, just that partly a young male subculture that suddenly feels people are kind of making an incursion into that space and having like a backlash against it. This was our world, and we don't want girls to play in it either. And then just this kind of nasty reaction, which you saw in kind of like analog subcultures as well, whether it's like music cultures, heavy metal, or role-playing games or things like that. These kind of boys' spaces that no, we don't want women involved. I mean, it's just being kind of replicated online.
A lot of my work exists in the physical world. I think there's something about anonymity that makes, I don't know, jerks come out. You know, like I think there's something about that. And I mean, and you know, that's I think part of it. I know that I was looking recently. I think like public art in Canada, at least, I think it was like 70% of public art, civic public art, anyways, has been is men doing it, and only 30% is women, which isn't right. And so, I mean, I hope that changes, and I hope that, you know, but I think there's, when people are actually held accountable for what they say, you know, if there's no anonymity in the real world, then I think people are a lot more, I guess, more careful about what they say. Does that, at the same time, though, it doesn't mean they're not thinking it, in which if they're thinking it's just as bad as saying it without, I don't know. And I mean, it's a big issue. I don't do a lot of online. I don't do any gaming. From what I understand, it's not very friendly out there. You know, I guess a lot of gendered insults, things like that. And yeah, I mean, you'd hope it would all change. I mean, I remember being asked, the things we make are just, you know, you can play with them, you can explore within them. And I remember someone asking I think it was a talk, you were there, David, well, how do I win? And there was a guy, and he's like, how do I win? And I was like, well, I don't make, well, I'm not going to buy that then. And I was like, well, I'm not making it for you then. You know, it was just a really weird kind of like, if there was no way for me to win this, then what am I doing with it then if I can't win it? And I don't know, I just felt that was kind of very, I don't know, like just kind of a like dude thing to say. So.